Hi again, everybody. Welcome into episode number 3 of When the Game Ends. My name is Ben Holden. Upper left is my co-host, Mike Carman, and today we're thrilled to be joined by former Detroit Red Wing defenseman Danny Dekeyser. Danny, I don't think I've seen you in person since, man, I can't even remember. It might have been going back to the Joe when you guys won the CCHA. It's good to see you, man. We're excited to have you on. How are things in your world?
Yeah, no, like you said, it's been a while. Yeah, we used to cross paths quite a bit there, but as we kind of mentioned earlier, things change and people go different ways sometimes. But no, I'm feeling good. I've been done playing now for almost 2 years, which is hard to believe. So it goes quick. Time goes fast, and when you're playing, you don't really always think about it. And there's always veteran guys and whatnot who mention it to you and just talk about how fast it goes. But when you're young, you're like, yeah, whatever. It is what it is. And but yeah, time goes fast. But I'm enjoying the other side of it now.
Yeah, I
What's
think.
funny is
Go ahead, Carmen.
you're talking about our last interview we had with LeBlanc that we asked. I think Ben asked him at the end, what is your advice for young guys coming up? And I think he said, take it one day at a time and enjoy every day, right? And I mean, you just hit the nail on the head right away. It goes quick. I mean, I just hit 10 years this year, and I cannot believe it's been 10 years since I played a game.
Yeah, yeah, no, it does. It really does. You just got to enjoy every chance you get to step out on the ice and enjoy each opportunity that you have. Because, like you said, before you know it, it's done.
Absolutely.
So at what point, how was it for you? Was it a couple years ago you gave it that last run with Toronto? We know you signed there and try to keep playing, and we both get it. Guys don't want to stop playing. I've said for all the years I've done television, I don't want to get a real job, man. And I'm sure as that you both smiled, so I know that's an adage that you both have. So when you had to do that, Danny, how tough was that to ultimately say, this is it, I'm done, I got to do something else?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's ultimately it's a tough fact to accept. I don't think any player or any athlete is ready to really accept the fact when that day comes that it's like, okay, yeah, like this is it, it's done. You're never really ready for that moment. So when it comes, it kind of hits you hard. You know what I mean? And I've talked to guys who have been through it and all that, and that was when I was still playing. And then you don't really realize, once it actually does happen, how it hits you sometimes. But yeah, for me, I mean, it was just it was kind of trending that way for a little while, and I was, to be honest, I was kind of holding on there for a while, anyways.
Hmm.
My last year with the Wings was pretty rough. I mean, it wasn't a great year team wise, and then just personally, I was in and out of the lineup a lot, and you start kind of thinking about things at that point, like is it really worth keeping trying to play? And a lot of it stemmed from a back issue that I had, and once that happened, a lot of things changed, and it kind of yeah, I just never fully recovered from that injury. So that was the tough part about it, is you're trying to go out there every day and pushing your body to the limits and doing everything that you did before, but the body just doesn't respond the same way, and that was the most frustrating part. Because I had done everything right up to that point, and you continue to do everything right, and training properly, and getting off ice work, and seeing physical therapists and stuff like that every day. But it just got to the point where, like, I was uh putting in 3 to 4 hours a day off the ice just to try to stay on the ice, and it gets tough at that point. So it was a grind there at the end, and then yeah, I gave it a go on a PTO in Vancouver. I went out there and did the best I could, and just even when I was there, I just never really felt like I had a chance. Not that they weren't giving me a chance. It was just I just wasn't playing good enough, and I knew that in my head. So after that, I gave it one last go in Toronto, and felt pretty good. But then I started having some back issues again and missing games there, and you just reach a point where it's kind of like enough is enough. And at that point, I definitely knew that I was ready to step away from the game, and maybe that I wasn't ready, but that it was time.
Makes sense. Yeah. So the injury, was that the back injury? Did that happen specifically in a game? Did that happen just over time with wear and tear? I mean, we all go, everybody, I think anybody that's played hockey long enough has some sort of lingering low back issues at varying levels. Obviously yours is, more severe. So did it happen in a game? How'd that come about?
Yeah, it was so it was like 2019, like start of the year. I kind of felt some stuff over the summer, tight back and all that. And then going into the year, it kind of just gradually got worse, leading into like December or so. And I had played like 6 or 8 games, and then we were heading into December. And actually, I was still in the IR, and I was doing rehab and all that. I was ready to come back, and I was practicing just with like a couple guys. The team was on the road, and there was I don't know, a couple skaters, and then one of our skills coaches out there running us through some drills. And I just did something, just a natural hockey move where it's non-contact or nothing, but just grabbing a puck or doing whatever, and twisted the wrong way, and just kind of felt everything kind of get a lot worse from that point. But leading up to then, it was just like a gradual buildup. It was nothing that happened in the game or anything like that. It wasn't like a hit or anything that I took where I knew right away that there was an issue. It was just one of those wear and tear items that just kind of comes along with the game, and gradually got worse. Up to the point that I needed to get some surgery on it. So it was a L5 S1 disc herniation, and it was tough because it kind of shot down my leg. So it hit that nerve and just kind of zapped all the strength out of my
Feeling.
Yeah, terrible feeling. I mean, it was even after the surgery, just rehabbing and stuff. It was like, it definitely was not better right away, but it's one of those things where nerve recovery takes a while. And that was like the most frustrating part too, is that it's like, all right, is this thing going to get better or is it not? And what's going to happen here? So that was the toughest part. And then just, coming back from that, never really quite felt the same.
Yeah, and that's what we've talked about too, the mental grind. We've covered it a little bit, the day-to-day of being a professional athlete, no matter what sport you're in. There is so much goes into it behind the scenes that the average fan doesn't see. I mean, we hadn't even talked about, this is the first time we've gotten into like the rehab side of things too, which, amp it up tenfold. Especially once you get back to playing, like you're there earlier than everybody because you got to get treated. You're staying later because you got to work on it after, and ice and whatever it takes. And I mean, that monotony and that struggle definitely wears on you mentally, I'm sure too. I mean, we've all been there, but for you, it sounds like it was a couple years worth of dealing with this, and that had to really have just really been a grind for you.
Yeah, definitely. No, you mentioned it. The rehab grind is tough because you're there. They want you there before a lot of the team gets there, because obviously their main focus is the guys on the ice. They want everybody to get better if you're hurt. But when the guys are there practicing and stuff, that's the main focus. So you're there before, or you're there after, and putting in a lot of longer hours. And then, a lot of times you're not traveling or going on the road, so you're just there either by yourself or with maybe one trainer or whatnot. So you're kind of missing out on a lot of stuff and a lot of that team stuff from that standpoint. But yeah, I mean, I had surgery in December, and then COVID hit in February, and then the NHL season didn't even start till that next January. So I missed like basically 13 months or whatever of not playing and all that. So that was a long time. And then played a few games, and it was kind of a combination of not really playing in that long in that 13 months, and then that along with the injury, like the side effects that kind of came along with that. Played a few games, and then wasn't feeling great. So I sat out like the next 10 just to try to get some more time. We had a short training camp that year and all that. Came back and played all right the rest of that year, and then just tried to battle through the next year, but really just wasn't meant to be.
So Danny, when you're going through that, at any point, are you thinking about, one, I could be done here at any point, and are you thinking about the future, or are you still in that player's mindset where you're just thinking about, I got to keep going here to try to get back? Take us through that a little bit if you can.
Well, yeah, I mean, going through that, definitely your mind likes to play tricks on you sometimes too. It's like, it's at a certain point, you're like, man, how much longer can I try to rehab this thing? Or how much more time am I going to give this? You know what I mean? Where ultimately you have to make that decision. Right. So, yeah, I mean, the tough thing for me was like, I was hoping to feel a lot better after the surgery, and that really never happened. I mean, I was, like I'd go on walks just down the street a few weeks after surgery and all that, and I could only really make it a few blocks because my half would just kind of like fizzle out, and just there would be no strength. So it was a weird feeling. And yeah, I mean, I guess to answer your question, you kind of start to question things definitely after a few months of not a ton of positive improvement and all that. So you start thinking about the future. I thought maybe I didn't even know if I was going to come back to play that first year initially. So I ended up playing those last two. And then, but yeah, you definitely started thinking about things after hockey, like, hey, like what am I going to get into or what am I going to start doing and all that stuff.
So I want
Did you at any point, sorry, Ben, did you at any point in time, you obviously had a very long career. You played, over 500 games in the NHL. You had established yourself as a player, not necessarily somebody that, was having to, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but didn't have to work for a spot anymore. Like you had your spot. It was solidified. You'd earned it. You'd worked for it. It was yours. Was there any point in time you started to feel pressure from, other guys, young guys coming in that you see are playing in your spot when you're hurt and you start to feel that nervousness? Was there any of that crept in for you, or was that not a factor?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like if I was on the ice and healthy, like, confident that, you keep your spot or whatever. But once you're not out there and then other guys start playing good, and then there's, everyone kind of fills into different roles. So you see some of the roles that you were doing out there kind of being taken or being slotted in by other players. It's definitely it's tough to see because it's like, all right, well, if they're playing well, it's one of those things like in the NFL, like a quarterback goes down, no matter how good he is, if a backup comes in and he's 4-0 or something in that month or whatever, it's tough to just yank him out, right? So that's kind of how sports go, and you want to try to stay healthy, obviously, as much as possible, but there's also that other side where if you're not out there and someone's playing well in your spot, then it's going to be tough for them to really give that spot back.
So Danny, I want to backtrack a little bit. We'll get back into, I want to get into your career a little bit here. I want to see if I can get you to confirm something that I was once told by Andy Murray, who you played for 2 years. So you're probably going to look at me and say, wow, this is a crazy question. Did you have a license plate holder on the back of your car in college? Do you know where I'm going?
Yeah. I did. Yep.
Okay, so let's make sure I got it right. I've been dying to ask you this since Andy told me this. We were just talking one day. And so Carmi, so Edmonton was the team, right?
Yeah, I think it was Edmonton, yeah.
So McTavish is behind Danny. You met with your family, right? At a local place with them, right? After a game?
Yeah.
And so the story goes, and I know Danny will add to it or polish it up. Murray gets a call, Carmi, from Craig McTavish and said, is there any chance we're going to sign this kid? He's got a Detroit Red Wing license plate holder on his car. That's true, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's true. That's funny. Yeah. That's that's a good story. I was meeting with some teams like that last year, in college, and obviously that one day, like he followed me to the restaurant or something that we were going to, and obviously that's when he saw it. But yeah, it's funny because I had that car since I was like 16. I was just a big grew up a huge Detroit sports fan. I had like the Tigers English D on the back sticker. Like a Red Wings license plate bracket or whatever around the license plate. So looking back, that's kind of funny. You know what I mean? I could see how he's flying in from Edmonton and being like, well, what the heck,
Yeah, and I got to follow up to that. So like this is another area I think for in your career specifically. I'm making sure I got the guys right here that I wanted to rattle off to you. Just some names here. Dylan Larkin, Alex DeBrincat, Andrew Kopp, Jeff Petrie, Tyler Mott, Abdelkader, Glenn Denning, Kevin Miller, Mike Modano, Mark Howe, Jim Cummins, Jimmy Carson, your pal Luke Witkowski, and you, Michigan guys that played for your hometown team. So in your career, and I think this is kind of along the lines of what you deal with as an athlete mentally, the pressure is hard enough on you guys as players. But then when you're playing for your hometown team, it's got to be ratcheted up. Can you share a little bit of what that experience was like for a decade of knowing you're playing for a team that you grew up idolizing as a kid?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when I first got there, we were still in that playoff hunt. We were in that 20-year span of making the playoffs. So I think my first 3 years, we made the playoffs, and First year, like lost to Chicago in 7, and then the next year lost to Tampa in 7. So like we were kind of still in the mix there and all that, and still, still had a legitimate chance of winning and all that. So
Mm-hmm.
once that kind of was out the door and we started to decline, and then Datsuk retires and some guys are getting older, Z, Croner, and those guys, things started to change. Obviously, we move into more of a rebuild. And that's when things are a little bit tougher, obviously, when you're out there playing and then you're losing, because winning's like a cure-all. You're out there, you're winning, life's good, everyone's happy, there's no issues. You start losing, and then it's like people start asking you questions. What's going on? What are you guys going to do this year? How are we looking and making any moves? All that type of stuff. So it's definitely, yeah, it's a change definitely when you start losing more, and and maybe you have some down years and all that, and then people start questioning things. So but ultimately playing in your hometown, I think is it's great. But you mentioned there's definitely more pressure. You got people asking you for tickets all the time and stuff like that. A lot more family, all that type of deal. So it's good, but there's definitely some more things that come along with it. But ultimately, I wouldn't have traded it for anything.
A lot of distractions, I'm sure. Like you said, people asking for tickets and buddies trying to get you to go out and hang out, and it's like, no, guys, like I need to be in, whatever. I'm sure there was a lot of that going on for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
oh
the
yeah,
early
definitely.
years, for
I
sure.
mean, I grew up playing youth hockey around here. Moved away 2 years for juniors, and then came right back for college. So I played all my youth hockey, all my college hockey here, Grand Rapids for a bit, and then here I was in Detroit. So it's like everywhere I go, it was I was seeing somebody somewhere and all that. So you can definitely get into some distractions and whatnot, but just try to keep a level head and keep your head on straight and keep moving forward.
So speaking of Michigan, you went to Western Michigan. What was that recruiting process like for you? Who else were you talking to? Or was it always Western? How did that play out?
So I played juniors 1 year in Trey on the BCHL, and then my second year I played in Sioux City. So that second year in Sioux City, I had a pretty good start to the year. We had like the USHL showcase and whatnot. So I was talking to a few different schools at the time, and then I didn't really have any real offers at that point. Even though I was playing well, things were kind of in the mix, and I was talking to a lot of people. But then I had a high ankle sprain that happened like, I don't know, end of October that year or something. So fairly early in the season. And then I missed like the next 6 weeks. And once that happened, there were some teams that were kind of, they were out and whatnot. I was still talking to a few of them, but Western was the one that I was kind of talking to the whole time. And that seemed to have the most interest. And then, they were the ones that made the first offer. So at that time, I didn't really have any offers. And then they made an offer to go play there after that year in Sioux City. And I was hurt. I wasn't playing and all that. So I took that, and then and at least I had some stability and something to look forward to for that next year. And I knew kind of the path that I was going to be going on. So came back and finished the year. Played pretty decent, not as hot as my start was, but played decent enough. And then kind of rolled into Western Michigan that next year. So ultimately it was just one of those things where they had shown most interest and kind of, threw out the first offer, and I took and kind of ran with it.
So one of the common threads that you had between Western and then eventually in your NHL career, and Carmi and I were talking the other day, and that's Jeff Blashill. And was Blash ultimately the reason, or the big reason, why you ended up going to Western?
Well, it's funny because the staff that recruited me was Cole Hain and Mark Fackler.
Oh, that's right.
Old staff. Yeah. So
Okay.
when I committed to Western, the old staff recruited me. So they,
Okay.
I talked to them throughout that first year when I was in Sioux City still and all that. And then into that summer is when they let that staff go. And then, that was kind of a different thing too. I had just committed with those coaches and all that staff and all that, and then they just get let go. So it's like, okay, what's going to happen here? Where's this going to go? And then they ultimately, obviously, they brought in Blash, and I think he came from Miami. I know he was at Miami.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
So he came in and then tried to change some things up, because the team there that prior year only won like 4 or 5 games, something like that. They had a rough year. So He did some recruiting on his own. He, brought in Chase Balassi and Birchback and some guys that maybe weren't thinking about going there. And then he had some relationships with them and brought them in, and just kind of started to change the culture there a little bit. So things went pretty well that first year. Actually really well for him, because he took off and went to Detroit after that year. So we had a good run, and that first year, pretty good run in the CCHA playoffs and all that. And then Wings asked him to be an assistant there, so then he left. But he was he was a great coach for me. And then we ultimately crossed paths again, because he went from Detroit to Grand Rapids and was the head coach there. So once I signed to Detroit, and then I played in Grand Rapids for a bit, he was there, and then obviously became the head coach of Detroit a few years after that. So we crossed paths quite a bit, and we had a really good relationship with him.
Keep him in the conversation with coaches here. So I met Blashill once or twice. After I got done playing, we had some guys, young guys out, doing a showcase deal out in Michigan, and one of the guys I was with knew him and seemed like a great guy, really like a guy you'd love to play for, like a real player's coach. I have to ask, because I know who the other coach was when you first came onto the Red Wings, who is pretty infamous nowadays. But Babcock, what was your experience playing for him?
Yeah, I mean, Babs was he was like a great X's and O's coach. You know what I mean? He was he was one of those coaches where sometimes there's coaches who are like buddy with the players, or like have their relationship with players. And with Babs, everything was separate. He was you didn't really go into his office unless there was a purpose and all that. So there was definitely a separation there. I thought X's and O's wise, he was probably as good as anybody, and preparing his teams as good as anybody as well. I obviously, I know there were other issues there and whatnot. But from my standpoint, X's and O's wise, he was a good coach.
That makes sense. That's definitely something that seems to be kind of a common topic, that when people do talk about him as like, yeah, great coach. But it's probably why it's, hasn't worked out as well for him in recent years, because it is more, they talk about, when we came up, that it was, a lot of coaches were like that, where it was like, you didn't go into the coach's office unless you were invited. It wasn't really an open door policy with every coach. And nowadays, that is definitely, even at the NHL, seems like it's becoming more and more of the norm, is the player's coach and the guy that can communicate the best with them away from the X's and O's are the ones that are having more success.
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely changed over the years. Over the 10 or so years that I played pro, it was like you said, it's the door's shut. You're not just walking into the coach's office unless somebody asked you to go in there, or there's a definite reason to. So that's kind of what's changed over the years and all that. And obviously it's just the dynamic of the changing game and all that.
In what way did Andy Murray prepare you for maybe that kind of stuff? And I don't mean that disrespectfully. I love Andy. I think he's a great man. I know it's different from a player's perspective, but I loved watching him coach and what he got out of you guys, man. So what kind of things did you take from playing for a guy like Andy?
Yeah, so Andy, I mean, we just mentioned alongside or with Babs there, but
yeah.
same kind of, I feel like same kind of coaching style and all that. They were coaching the NHL at the same time, and obviously Andy with LA and St. Louis, so he had a lot of that NHL experience. So when they announced that he was coming into Western, everybody was pretty excited. Here's a coach that 10 years NHL experience. He's going to come into Western and try to keep things rolling north here. But he had everybody prepared. He would put fill out a game sheet on the road and slip it under the door, and every morning you woke up, there was a piece of paper laying under your hotel room door and all that. So I'm sure you heard those stories. And,
oh yeah, I've heard some.
Yeah. And long meetings. One thing with Andy is his meetings, like practice days, if we were watching film or whatever, they were long. So he's sitting there watching film for what felt like, it wasn't an hour, but it felt like an hour. It's probably 30, 40, 45 minutes, whatever it is. So he tried to make sure that everybody knew exactly what they needed to do or what they were not doing right, and tried to make sure everybody was dialed in.
Yeah, I want to go back a little bit to the Red Wings now. You mentioned the eras you played through. Playoff teams, still a cup contender your first 3 years or thereabouts with the team. the rebuild, the changing of the arena. You played in that last game in the Joe, man. And I mean, you guys won a championship in college in there. I'm sure you went to countless games in there as a kid. You probably played in there as a kid. Just seeing that building go and playing that last game in there. What do you still remember vividly from that, Danny?
Yeah, that was a fun game. I mean, it was kind of an emotional game, just in the fact that you mentioned, I grew up playing a lot of youth hockey around here, played a bunch of years at Little Caesars, and we would skate downtown at the Joe all the time. So that was always fun as a kid, like being 8 or 9 years old and in 98, 99, watching those teams play. And then you step out on the ice and you're like, wow, this is pretty cool. It's like, I remember guys would go out there, or kids, I guess kids, we would go out there and practice and try to remake the plays. Like, a Sergei Fedorov OT winner, like, oh, here's what he did. Like, this is the spot where he was, like, stuff like that. So that was really cool to be a part of that last game. Growing up, I went to a ton of games, obviously, and played youth hockey in there, and we won the CCHA championship in there. And one of my first games as a wing was in there and all that. So when that was closing down, it was definitely a lot of great memories that I had in that game. And last time stepping out on that ice, just kind of looking around and thinking of all those great memories. So it was a cool thing to be a part of, though, for sure.
Well, let's kind of, we'll transition back now. We kind of covered a little bit of the hockey career. Let's talk about kind of your transition to becoming a real estate agent. So, when you went on your PTO with the Marlies, ultimately, like, hey, I'm going to be done. Was real estate already on your mind? Had someone talked to you about that already, or were you like me, where the game ended and you're like, well, what do I do now?
Yeah, so I had thought about it for a little bit, like even like those last few months of just playing, because I've got 3 kids and my wife were here in Detroit, and so I was in Vancouver, I was in Toronto, so I had a lot of time on my hands, when I was not at the rink. So I had just kind of done a lot of research on stuff and whatnot, and kind of wanted to maybe try out doing something in real estate. I thought of the investment side of maybe being, acquiring some commercial properties and whatnot, and leasing them out. And then I was looking at a few, and I was like, well, I really don't know what the hell I'm doing. So maybe I'll just go out and get my license and try to soak up as much information as possible. So that's what I did. I just went out, got my license, took the class and the test and all that, and then joined a brokerage here in Detroit, and just kind of have had a big interest in doing that. And it's been great because there's a lot of relationships that I've built over the years and all that, where it goes kind of hand in hand with real estate as well, because people are always looking for different houses and whatnot, or different opportunities. And I think for me, I really like doing real estate stuff, and but it's also those relationships that you form with people too, that just kind of keep you going every day and just kind of keep that inner drive.
Did you have a mentor or someone that you knew, kind of like, hey, when I want to be serious about this, that I'm gonna go talk to and get set up with the right agency? Or did you kind of start out on your own and then meet some people along the way with that? How did that play out?
So yeah, in Michigan, I don't know how it works in all the other states, but in Michigan, you got to in order to be an agent and to buy and sell, you have to be a part of a brokerage. So you have to either be a broker and just work for yourself, but when you're starting out, you can't do that. You got to join a brokerage. So I had met with a few places around Detroit. Ultimately settled on a spot in Grosse Pointe, which is just outside of Detroit, and it's just down. The office is kind of just down the street from my house, so it's nice and close and all that. But I had talked to it's called Saros Real Estate, so I talked to the guys there, went in and met with them a few times, and it's a good dynamic there. It's a bunch of a lot of like former high school and college athletes who are now into the real estate stuff. So it's pretty fun, and it's a younger group we got there as well. So it makes going to work a little bit more fun.
Yeah, it's competitive like anything, and you guys are athletes. So, I mean, it's not like having a guy coming in trying to truck you when you're playing a puck on the end wall. I know that, but do you still find the competitive juices doing what you're doing now going inside of you, Danny?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I had somebody reach out to me a few like back in the spring, and they were struggling to find a spot and whatnot, and they were just like, hey, if we're not working with anybody, but here's what we want, here's our criteria, here's our needs, and all that. We've reached out to a few people, but if you find this, let us know. And it's like, once something like that happens, it's like, all right, you know boots to the ground. Let's find this, and ultimately I was able to find them something, which was great because it was kind of competing with two or three other agents on that who they were just kind of looking around for the same type of thing. So that's one of those things too, and that was a sale that was it was off market, so it took a little bit more of a deeper dive to reach out to some people, and they push you one way and reach out to that other person and all that. So it's like one of those things that it just keeps you going, and it is definitely a little bit competitive too because in real estate, I mean, there's so many people that have their license and all that, and a lot of people have a family member, whatever, that they do their business through and that kind of thing. So it's competitive for sure, and that's what I like about it.
Well, Danny, you're doing the real estate thing. I've seen you doing camps and clinics for the last couple of years over at Liggett over there in Grosse Pointe, doing all kinds of stuff there. You're a dad, which we'll get to as well. But I got to harken back. I went into your bio from when you were at Western doing a little research last night. I didn't remember that you were a comms major there, and you're putting that to good use now, man. So a budding TV star before us. Tell us what you're doing with the Wings and with Bally's.
Yeah. I got to give it to Chase Ballasy a little bit. He used to rip me a lot for having that degree, and I was like, hey, I'm going to use it one day, right? But no, I'm glad I have it now because some of the I do still do quite a bit of stuff with the Wings. So I'll go to maybe half the home games, so call it 20-25 games a year, and some of that I'll do with Bally's. Some of it is fan relations type of stuff where I'm doing like some suite visits or taking pictures and signing some autographs or whatever. So the Bally's side of it, I've kind of gotten into it a little bit more since the second half of last season. So I've got about a dozen games or so on the docket for this year coming up. So that's been fun to do. And I'll be on the desk with John Keating. We'll be doing the pre and post game intermission reports, stuff like that. So that's been fun to be a part of. It's just keeps you involved, keeps you going to the rink and all that, and seeing a lot of the people that you used to see all the time when you were playing, and then when you stop, you kind of you lose out seeing all those people. So it's been fun to do that stuff, and then fun to be a part just of the other side of it, the fan relations side, and seeing a lot of people at the games that I used to see and whatnot, and saying hi to all them as well.
It's funny, real quick, Carmi.
That you would. Oh, go ahead.
Real quick, like Carmi was a guy when I was with him for 2 years. He was always well spoken. You were well spoken. It's like it's cool to see now. Like for me, going back all the years I've been around college hockey and hockey in general, to see guys like you doing the media thing, man. I got to give you both credit for that because everyone thinks it's easy, and honestly, it's not really that hard. I mean, but anyways, that's cool stuff. One more thing, and Danny, you play in the alumni games too. I've seen you in a couple of those that I've been lucky enough to call, and that's got to be awesome for you too to stay connected, just being on the ice in some form and fashion too, right?
Yeah, no, that's good. That's the other thing. I took over a role. So me and Drew Miller kind of took roles with the alumni back in the spring. He's the president now. I'm the vice president. So we're kind of tasked with just trying to put things together, different charity events, scheduling games, stuff like that. We have our a guy helping us out, George Bowman, who's a golf pro at Oakhurst Country Club. So he's been doing it for a long time. He started doing it with Joey Kosher, 15, 20 years ago. And then they kind of wanted to just turn things over to some of the younger alums a little bit as well. So we're working with George, myself, and Drew, and we're just trying to schedule as much as we can and get guys involved and keep that camaraderie because when you're done playing, a lot of times you don't see guys that you in forever. So we try to put events on and get guys back into town and just kind of hanging out and reminiscing and all that. So it's been good.
No shortage of alumni to choose from for the Red Wings. That's quite an impressive list of guys. I mean, I'm sure you can say that for a lot of franchises, but I would say Red Wings have to be up there as one of some of the most notable names in hockey. That you guys are probably getting out to these things. That's got to be really great to be around all those different generations. I know you talk about the alumni and the networks that you can lose or you don't keep those connections. And it's hard, right? I mean, everybody's got their own life, and you're not spending time, actively seeing those people every day. So having something designated like that, and we do it for school back here for the Gophers. We have a great alumni golf tournament every year that everybody shows up for. My class, a couple other classes do our own little trip, and it's just great to count on that annually to get to see the guys and stay in touch with everybody. So that's really cool that you're doing that. Speaking of alumni, Darren McCarty, Ben sent me a clip of you guys doing a little advertisement, little Ferris Bueller knockoff. So tell me what it was like working with Darren and how that whole experience went.
Yeah, man, D-Mac's awesome. He's a great guy, and we had a lot of fun shooting that. They originally asked me, and they didn't really give me a whole lot of details on what was going on. Somebody, from the marketing team, our contact who calls us on stuff. He's like, "Hey, can you do some stuff with D-Mac? Here's some dates in September." And he sent over like 6 or 8 dates, and I was like, "Yeah, I can do September 3rd and the 8th or whatever." He's like, "Well, no, this is all like all 8 dates. It's going to be a full day thing on all these days." I'm like, "What do you mean? What the heck's going on here?" He's like, "Well, they're putting together some kind of shoot. They want to do this commercial leading up to opening day and all that." So I was like, "Well, I said yes, so I guess I'm doing it." And but no, it was fun. Like I said, it was like 8 or 10 days of shooting. We did all these different locations all across Detroit, downtown, some parts of the suburbs, and all that. And obviously it's based on Ferris Bueller's Day Off, so we want a D-Mac's Day Off, and just a fun little skit that they did, and just try to get everybody excited for opening night, which is tonight. And we got the Wings playing that. They actually bumped the game back to 8 because the Tigers are playing at just after 6 o'clock. So downtown's going to be rocking and rolling today. It should be a fun day.
It's awesome. Yeah, the commercial, I got a kick out of that. It was definitely fun to watch, and I hadn't seen Darren McCarty live on a TV screen in a while, so I enjoyed that too, especially with that hairdo he's got going.
I'll be honest, there's a few cringy moments, but work your way through.
Oh man, it was good. It was good. You guys did a great job.
So Danny, this is unscripted, as you know, part of television. You made me think of something, man. On my Mount Rushmore of Detroit athletes, Darren McCarty is on it.
Yeah.
I mean, can you give me who your 4 would be, like, on the spot?
Yeah. My 4 on the spot probably are Lidstrom, Yzerman, and then I'd go with Datsuk and Zetterberg. Maybe a little biased because I played with those guys, but they were so good.
Yeah. I mean, what Darren did, obviously getting Lemieux back, but the goal he scored in the Cup final, I mean,
yeah,
his career is it's Hollywood, man.
Yeah, I mean, 4 cups, and he's a rock star around these parts.
Yeah,
I think doing a Mount Rushmore for Detroit is pretty hard, because if you go back to their teams that were amazing back in like the 50s too, and all the way up, and you'd almost have to have different generational ones. And right. Even then, you'd almost have to have one that's okay. Well, let's do a forward, a D, a grinder, and a fighter, right? Because I think somebody that obviously had a very tumultuous career, but seemed to be beloved by so many, Bob Probert, right? Yeah. How do you that's a guy that probably belongs on some sort of a recognition of Red Wings, top 10 Red Wings, whatever you want to call it, throughout the years. So. That's a tough one, Ben. Way to put him on the spot.
my list,
some good.
My list isn't much different. Obviously, I'm a little older than you guys, but I don't know that I would put Sergei on there. But it's tough. Like, how do you take Datsuk off there? I mean, how do you take Pavel Datsuk off that list? I mean, Lidstrom's got to be on there. Yzerman has to be on there. Many would say, how do you not have Howe on there? So it's tough, man. So we're a couple more serious ones for you before we wrap up here, Danny. But since we're on the subject, I had some rapid fire things I wanted to hit you on. I think I know the answer to the first one, but I want to hear it from your mouth. The best player you played with?
Best player I played with, it had to be Pavel. I mean, everyone, you can see his highlights, look him up on the internet. A lot of people watch a lot of his games and all that. But when you actually get to practice with a guy like that every single day, you just see so much more, just crazy stuff and so much skill that he had. when you see it day in and day out. I mean, there was stuff he was doing in practice where, he was just messing around and whatever, but it was like, geez, did you just see what Pavel did? It was like, yeah, crazy. But he was so good, so smart too. I mean, the way he played the game and the respect that other teams would give him, because nobody wanted their jockstrap laying on the ice. So, guys, it was hard to actually go and attack him because he'd make you look stupid.
All right, I got two more for you. Best player you played against. I know that's tough, but if you want to make it multiple, that's fine. But who would fit in that category for you?
I got to go with man. I'll go with McKinnon, Nathan McKinnon. I mean that guy's he's a special talent. I mean, I know McDavid gets a lot of the praise nowadays, and he's unbelievable too. But I don't know. To me, McKinnon's he's a little bit bigger, a little bit a little bit stronger. I think he's maybe a little bit more geared towards like kind of grinding playoff type of hockey as well. So I think that when that type of year comes around, he's hard to play against. Unbelievable player. Lastly,
for me, excluding Pavel Datsyuk, hardest player to defend when you played?
Sidney Crosby.
Okay.
I would say Sid, just because he's a horse and he's got like this low center of gravity. So like down low, in the corners, and when he's in the offensive zone, like protecting the puck, he's like so low to the ice, and he's got these massive legs, and it's like, hard to get the puck from him.
Carmy?
Yeah, no, I like those answers. We could definitely go on talking about those three for a while.
Yeah.
I do want to dip into one more kind of serious topic, just because it's definitely something that pretty recent. You are involved with a lawsuit regarding disability wages. I think if I'm saying that wrong, please correct me. But can you go into kind of how that played out, what happened there, and kind of what's going on, as much as you're comfortable sharing with us, being that it is ongoing?
Yeah. No, I'll give you a little bit, but I mean, throughout your career, a lot of guys carry different separate insurance policies and all that, and off ice, on ice, and whatnot. So, it's just one of those things where, you're carrying the coverage, and then if something happens, you hope that you're covered for it. So when you're not, it's a little disappointing. And that's kind of what we're going through right now. So it's just one of those things where, you're carrying the coverage, and, you're hoping they say what they're going to do. That's about
this
it.
Pertains to the back injury and what we're talking about, the games in the last several years. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I was, Googling some different things, and that popped up, and then I checked the date, and I saw like the news article was August of this year. So I'm like, that's very fresh. So we wanted to be respectful and give you your opportunity to share what you're comfortable with. And yeah, that would be very frustrating. I mean, you pay a lot of money for insurance, and then it's like, and that happens in all facets of life too, right? You pay all this money for insurance, and what are you going to be covered for?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we're just going through that right now. Hopefully that's finalized soon, but that's kind of the gist of it.
Okay.
All right, Danny.
Ben, did you have another one? Otherwise, I got that last thing for him.
Yeah, you go with that, and then we'll put a bow on it with the last thing. You go ahead.
Okay. So again, doing some Googling and YouTubing, I came across a video. I think it was about 10 years ago. You were on an Air Force base, it looked like, and you did a flight with the Blue Angels.
Yeah.
And I watched the video, and I have never been up in a jet like that, so I can't speak to it, which is why I get to give you a hard time about it. But you look like you might have been a little nervous on a couple of those rolls. So just share with us what that experience was like.
Yeah, that was awesome. Like looking back, I wish I would have enjoyed it a little bit more, because I was a little uptight that day, but just to be clear, I grew up as like not like the best flyer. So like flying was not one of my favorite things to do. So a fighter jet, it's a different aspect, but no, that was great. That was great. Yeah, I did that at Selfridge Air Force Base here in Michigan, and they had an opportunity where they were taking some people. They were in town for an air show and all that. So we were able to team got us connected there, and I did that ride that day. I mean, it was awesome. It was fun. Like, you're up in the air doing stuff that you like never think that you're going to be a part of. But I mean, a few of those, pulling 4 or 5 Gs on some of those turns, like, you start seeing black and white real quick. So one of the things they have you do is Like basically you got to like he'll give you a heads up. He's like, hey, okay, we're doing this maneuver, and then before they do some training, I'm like, all right, when you do these maneuvers, right before he does it, you have to like squeeze everything in your lower body, your legs, your glutes, everything. Because you got to try to keep the blood like into your chest and all that, because that's when people black out. Is like if you're just sitting there and you don't do anything, yeah, you'll be sleeping. So you got to like squeeze your legs like as hard as you can, your shoulders, everything, to try to, I guess, keep your blood where it's at and all that. So we did a few of those high G turns that were interesting. One time he was basically almost came to a stop, and the whole plane's just falling like flat like this, and then it just takes off. And I was like, geez. So it was flipping upside down and whatnot. They had a good paper bag in there at one point, so I needed that. But other than that, luckily, I didn't let it go all over the glass windshield or anything like that. That would have been bad. So,
Oh,
but that
man.
whole, I remember my wife drove me, and on the way home, she had to pull over, and I got out and started puking on the side of the road again. And then that whole day, I was like, absolutely, my body was exhausted. Like I slept, I took like a 3 hour nap. I was done.
Wow.
That's crazy. It gives you so much respect for the guys that, they do that for, obviously, your body adjusts and be used to it a little more than someone just doing it for the first time. But even
Right.
so, I mean, the stress and strain those guys go through. I mean, the average person probably thinks, oh, you're just flying a plane. Like, how hard
Right.
can that be? And
Yeah.
yeah,
I
it's a
think,
full body workout.
yeah. I think the pilots, they like getting the athletes on there and, giving them a little extra sometimes too.
Of course they do.
Yeah, they
You would
do.
do the same thing if they came on the ice.
Right. Exactly.
So Danny, last thing, I think Carmi came to me on this podcast idea, and we're having fun with it, and it's been awesome to hear, more of your story about, what you've gone through and the things that you've had to deal with, the change. And I think in this day and age, this isn't me, but I think there's a misconception that when a pro athlete retires, the money they're making, nothing should affect them. But we know that's not the case, right? We know that there are mental struggles, there's physical struggles from playing your sport. And so it's not just about the money. I mean, you're a dad, you got 3 daughters, all those things you have going in your life. The question is, what would be the best piece of advice you could give to some young guys that maybe they could take and prepare them for when they play 10 years or whatever they play of pro hockey, and then they have to move forward?
Well, yeah, I think you hit it on the head there. It's not an easy transition. I know a lot of people think like, you're happy about the career you had and you're thankful and all that. But a lot of people, they think it's just kind of status quo. You move on, everything, life's great. But, the athletes have such an inner drive to like be great and accomplish things and all that. So I think, I guess my advice for guys that are getting out of sports or retiring and all that is try to keep a routine. Number one, try to keep a routine. I like to try to hit the gym, 4 to 5 days a week still, if possible, depending on my schedule. Because I think a lot of guys stop working out and then your body starts kind of deteriorating as well. I feel a lot better when I work out, makes my back feel better, makes my body feel better. So I'd say stick to routine, try to hit the gym a little bit still, and then find something that you want to get into. I know it's not easy to figure that out, but find something that you enjoy doing or something that pays the bills that you like to do. You know what I mean? Ultimately, if you're doing something that is somewhat fun, there's nothing that's going to replicate the game you were playing. But as long as you try to get into something that's fun and that gives you the drive to wake up every morning and go do, I think that's all you can try to do.
Great. Carmi, closing thought from you?
No, well said. I completely agree with, the routine side of things. That's a new one we haven't heard yet, that, having that routine, and because you're so used to it, your life is so structured when you are playing sports. Like, you're an adult and you have a family and all that, but when you're at the rink or your travel schedule, everything's laid out for you in an itinerary all the time. So when you don't have that, it's not like you necessarily, are lost and wandering without like anything to do, but you do need to find a way to replicate that within a normal 9 to 5 life and family life and joining the everyday world. So I think that's a very good point to bring up. And yeah, and then I guess, yeah, just thank you for coming on. It's great meeting you. as most people meet nowadays, meeting on a screen versus meeting in person.
Yeah.
But no, we appreciate you coming on and sharing with us. And for me, it was, I grew up a Red Wings fan. I didn't lead with that. Even living in
You
Minnesota,
buried
I
the
was a
lead,
Stevie
man.
Yzerman.
Wow.
Yeah, I figured I'd save it I was trying to figure out when to work it in, but no, I
I
got my
thought I
Stevie
knew it,
Yzerman
Danny.
bobblehead up there.
I saw
and-
the bobblehead back there. Yeah.
yeah, so it's fun to get to talk to a guy that I remember watching play quite a bit, and always, again, I was always rooting for the Red Wings and still am to some degree. I think the more and more time I've spent away from the game, I'm getting sucked into being a Wild fan living here. But if I'm not rooting for the Wild, I'm definitely rooting for the Red Wings.
Oh, nice. Yeah, no, good
So,
stuff. I appreciate you guys having me. Hopefully this podcast has been going well for you guys. It's fun to be a part of it.
Thanks, Danny. It's great to see you again. A lot of great memories from those college days, man. There was nothing like for me going into Lawson and doing a game, man. That place was always banging, and you guys had some unbelievable teams, and glad that our friendship's still going on. So thanks for doing this. We appreciate it. We wish you and your family the very best as you continue on. So that'll do it for episode number 3 of When the Game Ends. For Mike Carman, my co-host, former Red Wing Danny Dekeyser, Ben Holden saying thanks for watching. We'll see you next time with an all-new episode.